Hi everyone, this is Dr. Love here. I just want to give you last minute instructions on what you need to do for the presentation for your individual projects. I want to make sure that all of you do well, not be so nervous. So let me go through this really quickly. Remember, your presentation is roughly about 10 to 12 minutes. If you are presenting as a group, most likely it's going to be about 15 minutes. For the change of speakers, but basically you're going to have a title page or title slide, and then after that you are going to have your abstract. The abstract is not something that you're going to read to us, but it should include, usually it has background, main objective of the study, the method usually has types of study, participants and sampling, and the analysis that you're going to be utilizing. So the descriptives and the specific inferential statistics that you're going to use, as well as sometimes there are procedures and measurements, etc. But it all depends on how much you have, because it has to be 250 words or less. Also, you have the results, conclusions, significance, limitations, and future research. If you need more information, I put a link there to give you some more information. And I'm also going to drop the PowerPoint in the Blackboard as a PPT file so you can use it if you like. Okay, for the introduction, it's 3 to 5 points here. Feel free to add graphics if you would like. You're just introducing what topic you have chosen and a brief background. The rationale, it's 2 to 3 bullet points on why you've chosen it, why it's important. It's always a good practice to talk about the introduction, the rationale, the significance of why you're doing this study. And then you could have as many as 3, but 1 is enough. Once you have the research questions, each research question needs to have a null hypothesis and a research or alternative hypothesis for each question. And they are together for each question. The specific aim, it's roughly about 2 to 5 objectives. These are like, what are you going to do? It's like learning objectives. So you're going to talk about how for this study, you're going to describe the descriptive statistics on the topic and the inferential statistics on certain topic. And then for the research question, and then the last thing, it could relate to your specific aspect of your research question. This is not a research class. Remember, it's a statistics class, but I always like to just make sure that you give yourself a background in terms of the literature review. Many of you are working with your dissertation topic, so you'll have salient points that you want to present, 2 to 4 points at most. Those of you with hypothetical data from SPSS, just give it some context. For example, if you're working with a fall data, people falling down, then you want to just give some statistics on how many people fall in the United States, how dangerous it is, and 65 and over suffer from this, and it's a big issue. So it's just giving a context to give it a nice touch to why you're doing the analysis that you're doing. I know for most stat classes that I've taken in my lifetime, this is not what we do. Usually they will tell you to do this part first, maybe a little bit further in terms of just run the descriptives, run the inferential, but it doesn't really do you any good without knowing why you're doing certain things. So these are the important part of the presentation. You're talking about the participants and sampling. So those of you who are using your own data set, you know where the participants are coming from, what kind of sampling frame that they're using. Those of you who are using proposed or the SPSS data, they actually have some descriptions on where they got the data. And then material surveys and instruments and measurements. If your data use surveys, you just want to write down what kind of surveys. That's your previous homework. Any measurements, it could be body weight, nutrition, distance, anything that you could physically measure. You could also put in there in terms of how the data was collected. The procedure, it's very brief. Like I said, 2 to 5 point bullet points to talk about. Survey was given, in 4 time periods, or it was a cross-sectional, just one-time thing, etc. It was a pre and post. Whenever you're doing research and any kind of statistical analysis, you have to think about the ethical consideration. So one of the key questions that you want to ask is, do I need IRB approval? And this will all depend on what kind of subjects that you're using. And remember your research classes that you've taken so far. This is really important, just 2 to 3 points at most, just to get your mind to think about these things as you move forward. The research study design, if you need a little bit of a refresher, there's more than this, but it's a case study design, cross-sectional study design, cohort design, causal design, longitudinal panel studies, quasi-experimental, mixed method as well, but we're only focused on the quantitative today. There's also action research, experimental study designs. There's the qualitative study designs that I can talk about, narrative, grounded theory, etc. So there's a lot of different study designs. So you want to just give it a context of what kind of design that your data, your study is actually looking at, so it makes sense. This helps you to think about your discussions and your results and the limitations later on. So this is the meat of our presentation because remember, after all, it's a statistical class, so I do need for you to talk about your descriptive statistics and inferential statistics based on your research questions. So I do not want you to list every single descriptive statistics and inferential statistics that we have learned in this class. So it's like going to someone's house and they have a small leak, but you end up kind of trying to fix everything around the house. I want you to just be focused on your research question and talk about which descriptive statistics that you're going to run to first check out your data, and what inferential statistics to answer 1 to 3 research question altogether, and have a separate slide for the descriptive and inferential statistics, what you're going to use, and the expected results. So it's usually just called results, but I just put expected because some of you are using proposed data, some of you are using data that you've collected from work, etc. And it's all non-de-identified, and nothing is shown to us that is that violates any kind of ethical consideration. So the results, you could put it in words that you found in your data set. Remember, in the beginning of the semester, I've asked you to select a data set that you're going to work with throughout the semester. So you can display the outputs here. It's not necessary, but you can put it on here if it's easier. And you're going to answer the question, did your research question, was it answered by the results that you ran? So descriptive and inferential statistics. Were the results statistically significant? In other words, were you able to accept or reject the null hypothesis is what you're doing for the results section. And then the conclusion and relevance, it's roughly about 2 to 3 points in terms of whether or not your data analysis that you have ran either addressed the research question and did not, and what your future research is going to be. And here are your references. And lastly, I just want to give you a warning or a prep that your classmates and I will have an opportunity to ask a few questions. Because of the limited time, probably going to be maybe 2 or 3 questions altogether, but we'll have an opportunity to ask you some questions. So I hope this is clear. If you are struggling today on Sunday, I do apologize that everything kind of all came to the end to do everything. But the last thing that you have is the quiz that has been released already. For those of you who like to kind of go back and forth, I'm the type of person who like to think I'm a multitasker, but I can only do one thing at a time. So good luck, everyone. I hope this is helpful, and I cannot wait until I see all your presentations in that last day of class. Thank you so much for all your hard work, and I will talk to you soon.